I've always been someone that's been close to my mom. I am a son of an immigrant from Honduras, an immigrant from San Luis Potosi in Mexico. People like you that are trans, they suffer a lot more. Being 5 years old, I had a crush on one of my friends. She was a girl, but coming back into school, nobody wanted to hang out with me or be my friend. And in that instant, I just like started crying so much, and I just like hugged my mom.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Confessions Podcast. This season, we celebrate the strength, perseverance, and power of transgender women and transgender men living with HIV. April 18th marks National Transgender HIV Testing Day, a time to uplift awareness, encourage health, and honor the incredible trans women and trans men who are leading the way in their communities. But beyond just one day, visibility and recognition matter every single day. Trans women and trans men are thriving, creating change, and building spaces of love, support, and empowerment. This season, we bring you stories of courage, leadership, and the unbreakable spirit of the trans community, shaping the future. Join us as we listen and celebrate their voices. Because when we uplift trans women and trans men, we uplift us all.
My name is Adonis Gutierrez. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a transgender man. I was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. I've been living with HIV since May 2021. I was 23 years old when I was diagnosed with HIV. 3 words that best describe me would be outgoing, determined, and I guess resourceful. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley, which is at the southernmost tip of South Texas, right by the U.S. and Mexican border. I am the second of 6 kids. I grew up in a religious household. I've always been someone that's been close to my mom since growing up. Well, I'm a Latino. I am a son of an immigrant from Honduras, an immigrant from San Luis Potosi in Mexico. We have lived in the Rio Grande Valley since when my mom got here 4 years before I was born. Well, the Rio Grande Valley has a lot of Latino culture, but it's also very conservative. There's a lot of different shames that align with being some sort of kind of religion. So being a trans person or queer, being someone living with HIV, it is something that is still very taboo here in the area. Growing up here in the valley, I first self-identified as a lesbian because that was the closest thing that I could aligned with what my surroundings were telling me. They were just like, okay, so you're a woman, and you like women, so you must be gay or a lesbian. When it came to my family and accepting that part of myself, it was a bit easier for my mom, as she voices out in Honduras, where she was from. She had a lot of gay and lesbian friends. Transition. It was right before I was diagnosed with HIV. When it came to that, my mom was a little more standoffish to accept me as a trans man than it was to accept me as being a lesbian in a way. The first thing she told me was like, are you sure? People like you that are trans, they suffer a lot more. Like, are you sure you don't want to just stay how you are? Where she's from, growing up, she would tell me about her gay friends and how much they suffered. One of her gay friends actually died from HIV. She tells it as one day he was there and the next they were pulling his body out of his house where he was laying. There was still like his imprint of his body in his bed. That's how bad it was over there. So that's just everything that she was thinking when I came out. It put things in a perspective to me because I saw how it was easier for, even though being a lesbian is still very ostracized in a way, that it was easier for her to be like, it's going to be easier because you'll still be passing. Whereas if you start this transition, I don't know how you're going to look, or I don't know how things are going to be, and I don't know how the people are going to treat you here. I feel like I've always knew, if I could have put it into words, I would have known that I was trans at maybe like 5 years old. This is how I got like into thinking that maybe I was gay or I was a lesbian. Being 5 years old, it was February, and we were doing those little heart notes to like, you got to give this to your Valentine's or whatever. I had a crush on one of my friends. She was a girl, and I, instead of like everybody was just giving it to like the opposite gender, I went and I gave it to her. And then things kind of changed, like being at that age, being 5. I don't know how 5-year-olds just like pushed me away, and I remember getting in trouble and being put into like a dark room, and my mom went and picked me up. They told her why, but even at that, like, she didn't bother me or she didn't say anything like the whole ride. She kind of just let it go. But coming back into school, nobody wanted to hang out with me or be my friend, and they started calling me like gay. Up until high school, I was open about liking women. I fully disclosed and said, hey, you know what, I'm a lesbian, or I like women. I was 14, 15, but even at that, I didn't like people to call me my name, so I adopted Adonis. Since I was 14, 15, I changed my name on Facebook and everything. That's how Adonis came to be. It wasn't until I left, graduated school, left, and started living in Louisiana that I started like indulging more into the LGBTQ community. I ended up coming back to live here in Texas. I saw a documentary going on MTV about a trans man, and I was already 22, and the documentary was featuring late Ashley, and he was talking about his transition, and how something that stuck with me was that in this episode, he says, I knew that the life I was living wasn't what I wanted to self-identify, because my whole life I've been trying to die and wake up and like be a man. And until I realized this was possible, I didn't want to be here. And that like resonated so much with me, because I was like, I struggled so much with like depression. It was because I felt like I never fit in anywhere, or anything really fit in with who I really was. It's how I started transitioning. I decided from one day to another, this is what I want. I disclosed it to my mom. She was caught off guard with that, because I feel like the signs were always there. It's just that she just never thought. She was so scared because of what she's seen the trans community suffer in Honduras, where she's from. She's always telling me, like, be careful, be loud and proud, but not be too loud, and always know when to see the signs and to know when to walk away. I was very privileged to have siblings that were very accepting from the start. I feel like that also helped my mom embrace the new me. I was the middle child, so I had an older sister, a younger sister, and then 2 little brothers. My siblings, they've always been like super woke. I say they were very open to be like, okay, I still love you regardless. Whereas with my mom, it was a little bit harder for her. I know for her, it felt like at the start she was losing someone. But I remember telling her, you're gonna lose someone either way, because if I don't transition, I don't think I'm gonna be here like much longer. I know my brothers didn't ask no questions. Like, I never fully like told them, hey, I'm trans, or because I've always worn like guy clothes and stuff. I mean, when the facial hair started coming out, they were just kind of like giving me tips. And I remember there was a point in time where they were becoming men, and I was growing facial hair too. We were like teaching each other about how to be a man, because we didn't have our dad growing up. I was very privileged to have that, and to have my family helping me and supporting me along the way. I guess it's, when it comes to my dad, it's something that is not very new here around the area, where there's a lot of Latino communities. I guess happens, most of us don't have your dad, or something happens. My mom just decided to walk away from my dad being such a hostile person and creating a hostile environment for me and my family and my brothers. Even when it came to my dad never, when he left, he never saw me come out as a lesbian or nothing. I've always been very tomboyish, so I felt like he knew right before he left. He left when I was 14. That was right before I came out. I felt like that him leaving was my green flag to be open, and I felt like it was safer to say who I was or who I was becoming. because he wasn't around. My dad came from a stronger, stricter Christian household, and things only worked a certain way. If you didn't align with what he thought, you knew things would go bad for you. And that's how I saw it growing up. If you didn't say yes to what he said yes, it wouldn't go. I was actually very familiar to what HIV was before I got diagnosed. Even in that aspect, before I got not diagnosed, I was already working at a HIV STD clinic. So I knew what HIV was, and I knew that people couldn't die from it anymore. But I never saw someone like me, a trans man, being affected by HIV. It was mainly like not seeing people like me in the clinic, always high risk populations. And now that I'm in this position, I feel like I know everyone is at risk to getting HIV. When I found out I was diagnosed with HIV, it caught me off guard. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's taken me a while for that to really like set in. I really felt disappointed. My mom, she was the first person that I thought of when I got that phone call. I knew I was going to be okay, but I didn't know what was going to happen to my life or how the people around me, if all that was still going to be available for me. I was mainly feeling so disappointed in myself. All I could think about was, what is my mom going to say? Like, she's having a hard time. I ended up opening up to my mom, not willingly, but I was drinking a lot around the time I found out. It came to a point where I was like drinking every day. My mom just approached me one day and she was like, "Hijo, ¿qué está pasando? Este no eres tú. ¿Tienes algo que decirme? ¿Por qué estás haciendo esto? Yo sé que tú no eres así." And in that instant, I just started crying so much, and I just hugged my mom. As I was crying, I told her, "Mom, tengo VIH." That was it. And she just hugged me, and it was quiet for about a minute. And then she stood up, and she was like, "Wipe off your tears. I'll be right back. I'm going to the kitchen." I knew she was going to go and have a talk with my siblings and let them know what was going on, because that was typical my mom. When she came back, she brought me back to the kitchen. My two brothers and my two sisters were there. They were all standing there, and they just looked at me, and my mom was like, "See, I told them everything." And my little sister, she was going to college, and surprisingly to me, she knew what U was. She knew more about HIV than my mom did, and apparently my little sister was telling my mom, as long as he's taking his medication, nothing's gonna happen to him. He's not gonna die. As long as he's taking care of himself, he's able to control that. We're not at risk. None of us are at risk. I guess my mom was saying that, think back about all the things that I had touched and everything, when it came to the food where I was eating. So I guess she was talking about the plates, the silverware, and my sister was like, "No, no, he has not put us at risk. That's not how you get HIV. Things have advanced a lot. He's gonna be okay as long as he's taking his medication." I just kind of got hugged by everyone, and then that was kind of it. I felt like hearing my mom say that my little sister was educating her, which I didn't even think she would be exposed to learning all this. But I guess while she was off in college, it felt a huge weight just came off. I felt like I was having an anxiety attack, and at that instant, when I knew everything was okay, it was it just left my body, and I could finally breathe. That was pretty much it. I mean, no one ever asked me anything after. I remember my mom started coming with me to events the local HIV STD clinic would throw, where they were doing testing and all. My mom and my sister, everyone got tested. The first time my mom got tested, she was very open to me, and she was like, "Mijo, I wish I had what you were going through, because I want to know what you're feeling, and I don't want you to feel alone." The love of a mother is big, because she doesn't know what she was saying. I remember telling my mom, "Cállate, ma, you don't want this, I love you, but no, this is something that I wouldn't want on you." just because you want for me to have someone to rely on and to confide in when it comes to me living with HIV. Overall, my family, they were all very understanding, and I guess it's always been me being very scared to what are they going to say or what's going to happen. Overall, that they love me even before I was Adonis, even before I figured myself out, even before the HIV diagnosis. They've always comes back to them loving me. Gender affirming care has been something that is very hard to get, even now. But when I think about me growing up, I don't know if it was something that was accessible for people to use. Now I'm able to see that I would have never known if someone was trans. I knew that there was trans women growing up, but I've never thought that it could be something that a man could end up being trans too. It never clicked in my head, and I guess it was just not talked about. But trans woman was something that I had heard of before. So I wouldn't know if gender affirming care was accessible back then or how people were transitioning growing up. Even now, right now, like it is really hard for people to get gender affirming care because there's a lack of clinics that are like competent enough to do gender affirming care or to initiate people into hormone replacement therapy. Here in the Valley, the clinics that do HIV and STD testing do gender affirming care or start people on hormone replacement therapy, but there's still that lack of full education or understanding of the trans experience or the care that they're serving. It's just like anywhere else, there is also that gap, or making sure that everyone is fully educated into the care that they're providing, starting from knowing how to properly address people as pronouns or the name they want to go by. There's still a lot of lack of empathy or having that one-on-one connection and understanding that if somebody wants you to call them this way, this is how you should be calling them, regardless of what's on the legal papers or what's on the documentation that you have to abide by through your organization. You could always address someone how they want to be addressed and then write it down in your notes in a legal way without letting that person know that you can't be fully transparent with them. There's still so much to go, but I'm glad that there's people opening these spaces and trying to understand. But we're still in the early steps of trying to provide gender affirming care that is fully informed and educated to do these decisions and implement these things within places here in the RGV. And I never really went to do an HIV test. I was just called by the state and I was told that I might have been exposed to someone that had HIV. The first thing I did was call the local HIV and STD testing clinic that I was working at. They made sure everything was going to be extra confidential because I was an employee there. I remember going in, getting the test, seeing those 3 lines in the rapid HIV testing and it being like, you have HIV. I was lucky enough that this HIV STD clinic was starting something called Rapid Start. So I was lucky enough to even start the process the same day that I was there. I remember, I don't hold it against anyone. I do have an idea, but I've never followed up with the person. I just wanted to move forward regardless of how it happened. I just felt like thinking back, it was just going to make things worse. I was just not feeling the right headspace because it also falls back on like me in a way. I should have known better and I should have also routinely tested myself. Even when protection was always used, there's always more that you could do. My greatest support would be and has been my family, my friends, being around people with lived experience, people that have lived with HIV for even before I was born. Having those support networks, being able to reach out to someone and talk about what I'm going through, my early diagnosis, and even things that come up like getting tired of taking your medication sometimes. Having someone kind of like give you that extra push into staying in care does help. I want people that are listening to me right now to know that whatever happens, we're not broken. Whatever people say we are, and overall you're never going to be alone. Always get tested, start treatment if you can, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to feel like you can't deal with things alone. If you don't know where to start, Look up your local HIV STD testing clinic and go from there. I created an organization. It is called Under the Umbrella RGV. It's still a pretty grassroots organization where we literally focus on trans and gender nonconforming individuals. I like to share my lived experience with HIV, not directly disclosing the whole time, but giving people that extra push when it comes to the trans community and being informed, knowing where to go, knowing the process, knowing there's resources available for someone to know that they're not alone. We create Zoom support groups and we talk about, it could be gender affirming care, it's mainly just a safe space for people to open up. There's trans individuals that could fall into a different LGBTQ umbrella, like being trans women could be lesbians, trans women could be straight, trans women could be dating a trans man could date men, trans men could be hetero, they could also be gay, our sexual identities don't fully identify with our sexual orientation. The Transgender Law Center has this Positively Trans group. I've been helping them as being part of the steering committee, and we talk about and we advance the health agenda for the trans community, specifically people living with HIV, where we write down our needs. It's called the needs assessment, and what we want and what we lack. As of last year, locally, I talked about me as a person living with HIV here at our World AIDS Day event that we host yearly. Last year was the first time that I went fully open in front of strangers and people I hadn't really disclosed. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of what I have, because how everyone says, HIV doesn't define us. I'm not what HIV has been said to be for many, many years. I am Adonis. I'm on the medication Dovato. It's been good. I've never had any side effects. I think one of the daily challenge would just be trying to stay visible and continue advocating when there's little to slim to none of people that look like me that are trans men. When it comes to the medication, is it called fatigue? I have to take this medication if I want to continue advocating and staying alive. My support system, I mainly just interact with long-term HIV survivors. They're very open about how it used to be worse than it is now. For me to see that there's advancements and maybe in 10 years from now, HIV could come to an end. The injectable medication, it has been discussed with me by my provider, but it hasn't been something I've been wanting to do, just because I'm already I inject myself once a week. So adding another injection, I feel like it's just too much. I don't want it to come down to me not taking my testosterone because I am already getting injected. With this current political climate, I'm scared that we are not going to have access to this life-saving medication. Mainly think about the people that don't have insurance, that rely on patient assistance programs or rely on Medicaid or rely on the Ryan White program. It's just scary to think that so many folks' lives are on the line because of how people have some ideologies. People need to wake up. People need to really indulge and see what's happening around them. See what your representatives are doing. Call your representatives. We have to have open communication and conversations with everyone around us for them to know that this could harm someone, this could harm people. I'm just very proud of everything I've done. I think I've come a long way. HIV didn't define me. It actually gave me life. It's opened my life to so many opportunities. I've been able to meet people I never thought I would ever meet in person. I've accomplished so much in the last couple of years. Living with HIV gave me a meaning to keep going, and it changed my life from a negative to a positive. I really appreciate being part of this conversation.
As we honor the trans women and the trans men in this season, we celebrate their strength, courage, and determination. Their voices, their stories, and their existence matter today, tomorrow, and always. Trans visibility is more than recognition. It's about ensuring that trans women and trans men have access to healthcare, safety, and the respect they deserve. It's about celebrating their leadership, their joy, and their undeniable impact in shaping a better world. We hope these conversations have inspired you, challenged you, and reminded you that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and inclusive society. Now, more than ever, we must be stronger allies, listening, supporting, and standing alongside the transgender community in the fight for equity and dignity. Thank you for listening. Share these stories, continue the conversation, and most importantly, take action, because visibility is power, and trans women and trans men are unstoppable.